It's March 2023, and I'm back in Paris. The streets are full of rubbish, so it might not be the best time for a visit, but I've come anyway. I'm just walking along the banks of the Seine to my first destination, which is the Museum of the Middle Ages. I could have taken the train. You can see the metro line down there, which would have been slightly faster, but along the way, I was hoping to catch a glimpse of one of the great sights of Paris. That is there on the right, the Pantheon, where many of France's most eminent writers and thinkers are interred, including Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Voltaire himself. In the hotel off the square, the art and literary movement known as Surrealism was founded in the 20th century by André Breton and his friends. The streets show signs of a lot of political feelings and emotions, and you can see some of the rubbish bags there that have built up. Tensions were also running high after the fall of the Roman Empire. Here you can see some Visigothic crowns, created in Spain by the barbarian rulers who had taken over once Rome had collapsed. The barbarians were very into highly visual and ornate small-scale pieces of artwork, such as these ivory diptychs, which signified their importance. This time of transition, very little remained to hold together what had been the Roman world, one of the few exceptions being Christianity. At this time, many of the barbarian elite were largely illiterate, and so books and other objects of significance were covered in jewels and gilding to emphasize their importance. This mix of barbarian kings, Christianity, and highly ornate decoration would become a hallmark of the Middle Ages. Once things stabilized, Christian bishops who carried highly ornate objects such as this gold crozier became community leaders and were ensconced in large-scale cathedrals surrounded by incredibly ornate decoration. One of the innovations of this period was an increase in the scale of buildings not seen since the Roman age, and this was known as the Romanesque style accordingly. Here we have some other precious objects. You can see on the left an oliphant, or a highly ornate horn. This was held by the barbarian king Charlemagne, who was the first ruler of what became known as the Holy Roman Empire. Charlemagne was effectively the biggest and baddest warlord of his age. Upon his death, his kingdom was split between his three sons. The territories would go on to form important parts of what is now France, Germany, and Italy. 300 years after Charlemagne, Europe had stabilized and was now engaged in creating large-scale cathedrals, including the ruins which are stored in this room, which were of Notre Dame de Paris. Here you can see a very impressive statue of Adam, showing that a lot of the figurative carving skills which had been lost following the collapse of the Roman Empire had been regained in this, the High Middle Ages, spanning from 1000 to 1300 AD. The museum effectively consists of two bits: the Hotel de Cluny, which was originally a house for the medieval abbots, and this bit, which was the old Roman baths, back when Paris was a Roman city. You can see from its size, it's truly impressive that even 2000 years ago or so, they were able to build a building of this complexity. Gaul was one of the most important provinces in the Roman Empire at this time, so it's no surprise that they spared no expense on such lavish baths. Originally the Frigidarium, the cold bath, contrasted with the Tepidarium, the medium bath, and the Caldarium, the hot bath. The Romans had a very elaborate system to ensure that they were thoroughly cleaned, and public hygiene was important. Here we have some gold from the local people before the Romans came. Now I'm back in the Hotel de Cluny part of the museum. Here you can see a relic chest carved out of ivory. This would have been used to hold Stain's relics. And here you can also see some stained glass windows. Note the prominence of the colours red, gold and blue, which is common in early medieval windows, reflecting a lack of chemicals available and the difficulties in transporting goods across long distances. As the wealth of the church recovered and things stabilized in the High Middle Ages, ornate monuments such as these statues of the apostles became more common. Here you can see an approximation of classical sculpture beginning to influence the Masons. In addition, polychromy, or multiple colours, which was an important part of Roman art, began to come back to the fore. We're shortly going to see some capitals which have been carved with leaves, and on some of them you may be able to catch a few flecks of gold and green paint, reflecting how they must have looked before the colours faded. Most of these works date from around the 1200s, which was a high point in the High Middle Ages. In the 1300s, the Hundred Years' War between England and France and the Black Death had devastating impacts on the nobility and the ability of the population to maintain such a high standard of output without it being subject to looting or damage. At the heart of the Middle Ages was the Pope. He was incredibly wealthy as the head of the church and was able to give certain favoured nobles golden roses such as these. This one in particular dates from the 1300s. The 1400s marks an interesting transition between the medieval world and the start of the Renaissance. During the Renaissance, the classical style became ever more prominent in carvings such as these. You have several masterworkers at this time in both stone and in wood, such as Tilman Riemenschneider in the 1400s. See, for example, some of these carvings just coming up, which show exquisite detail despite not being made of marble. The 1400s also saw the high water mark of the Gothic and the creation of this chapel here. You can see from that wonderful painted roof, the ornate floral carvings, and that little private staircase in the corner, covered with metalwork, that this was a time of truly exquisite craftsmanship. Tapestries became ever more elaborate, such as this one, showing the pressing of wine, a tradition which has been going on in France for many hundreds of years. There also started to be increased contact with the outside world. Here is some glassware from the Orient, in a semi-Islamic style. These skills were brought back to Europe, and the Venetians in Italy in particular implemented some interesting hybrid glaze. There was also increased technology, as shown by this sundial and this on the right, the astrolabe, a very clever piece of kit for charting the night sky for navigation purposes. By the end of the Middle Ages, the elites had woven a rich tapestry of chivalric traditions, including those of courtly love and of honourable behaviour, which had gone some way to taming the barbarian warlords. This room consists of 6 tapestries, which are probably the most famous works in the museum. They cover the 5 senses, although it's these small elements such as the dog and the little monkey that really make it for me. There is also a 6th one, which is mysterious and states, "My sole desire," on the tent. The museum ends with the last blast of colour and fanfare of several altarpieces and paintings. It's a good way to tie off our trip.